Now broadcasting. Let's see what happens over here. Attendees, 216, 291, 368. Woo, 520. 580. We'll give them just a second to see if we can get close to how many people registered before we talk. We can just
the chat is happening. People are seeing chat.
Chat is on.
Can we respond to the chat things also individually?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Gosh, this is the new way to do shows. Just sit at home and just zoom the thing in. Look,
man, there was a band my daughter was following.
Look how fast the chat.
This is like the best VIP meet and greet. Sell merch, sit at home, go to the beach.
we do have a virtual tip jar if we need to throw it out there, man.
Yeah. I think you're onto something here, Steve.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's all in Bitcoin.
We don't even have pants on. We just sit here in our pajamas, and just
yeah.
And that wasn't a sexual thing, by the way. So
no, that's good. That's good. It's more about your comfort level.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a band called Sure that my daughter followed, and they did a week-long house tour, where the first night they played in their kitchen, and played in the living room. And and they sold individual tickets for each night, or for $35 you could get the whole week.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
The night that they had in one of the guys' bedrooms, that night sold out so fast that they added a night.
And the band all lives together, right?
Yeah.
They all live together. They sold T-shirts with like a picture of their house, the floor plan of the house, and the numbers of the night.
Brilliant.
With a seating chart and everything. Yeah.
They just sold it for $10 a night.
It's still a load in and a load out, so technically it constitutes as a different gig. You got to move the gear.
You got to pay the crew for that.
Totally, yeah. There's expenses here,
Hey, but Vic, you bring up a good point, and we'll go ahead and get started. And I'll introduce people in a second, but raise your hand in here if you remember when your band used to live together. I mean, I'm sure everybody is at some point. We were in a band and we all lived together. My how times now when you get off the road, you run away from each other, right? Is that the?
Yeah, we were just living together on tour in February. And in a band house in Nashville last summer, writing an album. So yeah, we still live together.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
I haven't passed that stage yet.
Yeah, exactly. One of these days we'll be able to afford to get our own houses. It'll be awesome. Yeah.
So anyway, thank you all so much for coming and spending a little of your time. The one beautiful thing, and I've noticed it about bass players and drummers, musicians in general, but I'm just going to single out the two most important people in the band. The bass players and drummers and virtually everybody I meet is so cool, and it doesn't matter what stratosphere you are in your career. It just seems like we're kind of, as Vic puts it funny, he says we're the adults in the band, and we create a nice environment for everybody else to play. You know what I mean? For everybody else to be the star, you want the kids to be a star. But bass and drums, we hold down what we do. So I just thank you all for number one, for taking your time out today and sharing with your fans and with us mainly. I mean, this is so selfish on my part. It's like I'm stuck here, and we'll all talk about it, but I'm stuck alone. My family's in Boston, and I'm down at my studio in Myrtle Beach, and a conspiracy of events basically trapped me here. So this is just a great way to hang out with some great friends, and surprisingly, some people on the screen didn't know each other before. They just knew of each other. So it's great to make new acquaintances. But we have up here Dave Marvulio. Dave is one of our Berkeley faculty. He was one of my first hires when I got there, because he approaches all kinds of music academically. And in a college setting, I mean, I think Danny knows this. When you go to college, it's either jazz or classical. And for the most part, but Dave has brought a whole new dimension to the bass department, transcribing all of your music for his classes. He teaches metal bass. He teaches all kinds of indie rock, bass, pick bass, all these things that you don't see typically in an academic setting. And we're just glad to have him. I wanted him to be a part of this as well. And he's a great musician. And anybody whose nickname is Brutus on a faculty has got to be bad. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And over there, you'll see Sandro Scoccia. He's the assistant chair of the bass department. And whenever things go really well, he had his hand in it. And when things fall apart, you know, it's usually me. I'll go ahead and say it. Yeah, I can tear things up, and Sandro can fix them really quickly. So everybody else really doesn't need any recognition. You are all, in my house and many houses out there, household names, and I can't say how much I appreciate it. But first thing I'd like to ask, we're all, like, I'm trapped, literally, you know, by this virus and by whatever has conspired to put me here, but I know everybody else has, so maybe we can just go around for a minute or two and just talk about where we are, where we were when the pandemic hit. I know some of you are on tour, and just, you know, share anything you want to as a way of introduction. And we can start with the youngest. No, we'll then I'll start. Dave Ellefson. I've known you maybe longer, except for Victor, longer than anybody in here. So kick it off.
Sure. Yeah, we've known each other since what, I think 1989, I think, right? We met in Los Angeles. So I'm out in Scottsdale, Arizona at home here. And Megadeth, Five Finger Death Punch, and Bad Wolves were doing a big sports arena tour across Europe. Started, I think, second week of January. And we finished in Sofia, Bulgaria, February 23rd. And we got home safely. So far, everybody from all three bands and crew, everybody's fine without any incident. But as we were over there, it was all ramping up. Like, we could start to kind of, it was trailing behind us, the coronavirus. And ironically, we played the smallest show, was like a kind of about a 4,000 seat venue in Milan, Italy, and was an awesome show. One of those sweaty, you know, headbanger heavy metal shows that we love. But it was amazing that, of course, that would be the one we'd be the most up close and personal and sweaty and just that environment. And then, you know, Italy was the first, I think, in Europe that really, you know, had such a big hit with the coronavirus. But, you know, fortunately, we got out of there in time and got home safely. So, yeah, we were kind of about a week or two ahead of it all across Europe through January and February.
But you're home now. Good.
Yes. Yep. Home in Arizona. Yep.
Yeah. Danny.
Yeah.
One of my new
Jess and I were, we had just gotten back from, I guess, Australia, New Zealand. And it was funny, we had about a week break before we were starting a big American thing, you know. Well, it's like, actually, when we're doing about a week or two of shows and then taking a break and then going out for the big run. But yeah, when we got back on that little break, we heard that some kid had it at our show in Auckland. And all those shows over there, it was a little bit scary because there's GA floor, so all the people were moshing and everything. So God knows how many people got infected at that last gig that we did over there. But we got back, and then it really hit the fan when we just started to do some Northwest shows, and then we did 2 of our gigs, and then the last 3 of the 5 that were on that little mini run up there in the Northwest got canceled. So we just came home, and that was kind of the end of the deal. A couple of our crew guys got infected and stuff, but we've been fortunate enough, at least all the band members made it out alive at this point. And, but here we are now, just stuck in limbo. We're supposed to be starting our biggest run of the album cycle, like in a week or something, I guess. I don't know. I can't remember the exact dates, but it's all canceled
I think
now.
it's today. It was supposed to be our first show today.
Oh, I knew it was coming up, but now there we go. Here we are for God knows how long. So we're just making the best of it.
Yeah. Billy, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm in a similar situation. My wife's away, so it's just me and the cat here in Nashville. So we're getting along really well, and I'm keeping him well entertained, and he's doing the same for me. But we were on tour with Sons of Apollo we had done 4 shows, 2 in Germany, then Norway and Sweden. And the whole time we were just about to leave and do fly dates into Russia and the Ukraine. And I expressed to the rest of the guys in the band, if we do get stuck over here, they probably will not put us up at the Four Seasons Hotel. We'll be probably in some barracks somewhere or something, waiting permission to re-enter the USA. So as long as we're here now, we should strongly consider what we want to do. And initially, nobody was quite sure what we could do. It's always tough to cancel a show. I don't know any of the people that are watching. If you haven't played in a pro band and been on tour, canceling is one of the worst things you can do. I've done shows without a guy, with a member out on the bus sick. We had to do the show anyway, only because it's so difficult to go back and change your routing. And it's a really tough thing to cancel a show. And you never, ever want to do it for anything. Unfortunately, we said, well, we're going to have to do what we got to do here. And no one else had done it quite, well, some had done it already, but everybody was kind of waiting for somebody to make the first move. And so we said, we're really sorry, but we got to pull the plug. And then after us, a lot of other bands did as well. Some of the promoters were upset because of the loss of income, and they had sold tickets and they'd given deposits. But then soon after that, all the governments were shutting the promoters down too. So they realized that they it was inevitable that everything was going to stop. So here I am in Nashville, me and my kitty cat, and we're having a grand time. I'm doing a lot of cooking and practicing my ass off.
Yeah. A lot of recipes for the Purina cat chow. You guys are compromising on how to. Hey, looks like Ray made it in too. All right.
Hey, hey, what's up? How you doing?
All right.
All right.
Hey, Ray.
I thought you were coming in with the drum solo.
We're here.
Oh yeah, they're there.
You can.
Cool. And it'd be like Ginger Baker and Elvin Jones. We love to hear that one. Justin, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Excellent.
So your story's pretty much the same as Danny's, I guess. That's
Yeah. I mean, listening to Billy, it was really weird because it seemed like it was a real chain reaction that suddenly started to happen. People started canceling. I remember we were in the Northwest, and then I think Pearl Jam canceled a tour that hadn't even started yet, so people started preempting what was going to happen. And then the promoters started shutting down basketball games. Danny and I actually went to the last NBA game in the building that we played the next night. We were in Portland. That was the last show we did. So it was hard to understand what was a kind of a reaction and what was being done for the right reasons, kind of thing, because stuff just started falling down around you. So we just we were literally stranded in Boise in Idaho. That was the last place we ended up. We just drove to Boise and sat there and just kind of watched everything close down, and then sat there for a day or two. And even the streets got quiet in Boise, if that's even possible, And then we flew home from there. It just all it happened so quickly. Like Billy said, it was kind of happening. It felt like it was following us around, and all the walls just kind of in like this. And then there was nothing left to do apart from go home. So it was a bit of a confusing time.
yeah. Victor.
I just have to say this. I'm watching the chats and the questions, and I don't know if you guys are seeing it, but whenever one of you talks, the people are just like, Justin, love your style, you love Tool, and another one of you starts talking.
Hey, Vic, now you're talking. Yeah, I see Bela Fleck, Victor.
Wow. Okay. Watch your language up there. I see you typing all that stuff. Anyway, for me, I'm just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and I was trying to figure it out with my wife. I think I'm literally home now for longer than I've been in almost 2 decades. And then literally can't remember being home. At least I have 4 kids. Oldest is 22, the youngest is 15. My 15 and 16-year-old, I can almost guarantee I've never been home a month in a row of their lives.
Wow.
And that's sad, you know? So, you know, I'm home now, not for the reasons I want to be, but I'm making the most of it, bugging my kids every day and making the most of it. And believe it or not, the thing I'm doing the least is music. I'm really giving family time. You know, like Billy's got his cat. I've got a dog here, so we're having a lot of fun. But I will say this: somebody said canceling tours. I think it was Billy said that. Wow, absolutely right. We were supposed to fly to Seattle the day that their governor or whoever it was shut it down. And our tour manager, who lives up a little north of Boston, was literally heading out the door, going to the airport, when my manager, Danette, called him, I think it was Danette that called him and said, don't go. Because Danette and the booking agent and me, we're on the phone just trying to figure it out. And my brother Joseph's playing keys. He's got heavy asthma. Should we go? And then, you know, a few minutes later, they're saying, okay, now we're only going to let people congregate in 250, you know, people at a time. And the jazz club holds more than that. And a few of the shows are sold out. So the promoter's like, well, I'm going to only let 250 come. And we're already thinking, well, there's going to be a lot of people disappointed if they can't get in. And things are moving so fast, and we're trying to make decisions. After, you know, a few minutes of that, when we realize that, like you said, if we get stuck there, we're stuck there. You know, it's you know, not that far away. It's Seattle, but still, I don't want to get stuck in Seattle, which, you know, at first was like the epicenter of the virus in the U.S. And so we just pulled the plug. And right after we did, their governor shut Seattle down, because it had gotten down to 10 people can congregate. And then it just went down to nothing. So we were lucky and made a good decision. And that was sometime back in I think March or some early March. And I've just been home, going through closets and stuff, probably like all of us, cleaning out stuff, you know, and trying to be a dad and a husband, housekeeper, homeschool teacher.
But you're not cooking, are you?
You know, I haven't done a whole lot of that because fortunately my wife loves to cook, and she's really kicked in baking every day. So I've been able to just reap the benefits of that and not have to cook yet.
Your family's lucky, man.
Steve, you know, I got one dish. I can make that one dish, peaches and biscuits. That's about it. But it's been I'm making the most of it. I know it's not the reasons that we all want to be home, but since we're here, you know, I'm just going ahead and making the most of it and trying to do the best I can while I'm here.
Yeah.
Right on.
Ray, welcome. Thank you for being, you know, I got to say, all 3 Nashville people, Billy, Ray, and Victor, are all in one corner of my screen. And I'm wondering how Zoom knows that. But the other part that amazes me is how Billy and Ray appear to be broadcasting from Guitar Center. Or maybe it's Sam Ash. I don't know which one it is, but I'm sorry to see you guys didn't make it home. But that's a really cool P-bass hanging up back there, Billy. I'm kidding. How you doing, Ray?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. What a joy to have you here. What?
Yeah, I got 3 full setups in my house, fortunately. So, and they're all mic'd all the time, so I get to just pick whatever kit I want, you know.
Lucky.
Yeah. It's fun, but it's you know, like Victor, I'm this, you know, same thing. I'm homeschooling madness. That's another animal. I'll tell you what, I have a whole new respect for Pete Parada, the drummer of Offspring. They homeschool their children, and they're just the brightest, most intelligent, active in music and arts, and just so many. And I'm always like, well, wow, how do you do that? Because it's 100% you know. So I have a whole new respect, man, because I'm teaching, you know, the 5-year-old and 9-year-old, and it's like my wife is way better at it than I am. And I taught music, but that's a whole different, you know, teaching the patience level, you know, the attention spans, how fast they snap by. But yeah, it's a totally different animal, you know.
Wow. So were you on tour when all of this happened, or?
Our tour with Breaking Ben, we just finished an arena tour, right, and literally a week after that, we were supposed to go to Japan to do Knotfest. Slipknot puts on this big festival, and they're trying to do it in different parts of the world. Well, we did Knotfest a year or two ago, and it was supposed to happen in mid-March. And my tour manager called me and said, "Hey, I don't know if this thing's happening." And then I go to Japan. I do clinics over there. I start in Sendai, and I go to Fukuoka, the very south, and I do 6 cities. So usually I piggyback off of Korn. So because Korn's paying my ticket to go over there. So I had the whole clinic tour planned. You know, we were going to do Knotfest, and I was staying an extra 7 days. And my buddy Toshi, the great guitar player I used to play in David Lee Roth with, called me and goes, "Hey man, it's pretty scary over here. I don't know if I want to endanger you, and it's just not safe, man. I don't know if you," and I'm like, wow, that's so super concerning. And then sure enough, the next day I got a call from my TM saying, "Hey, Japan's off, and there's a good chance that Europe's going to be off." And that's the festivals. That's Donington, Rock am Ring, Rock am Park. As a lot of you guys know, they're giant. I mean, 50 to 80,000 people, and there's no way that's going to happen. So it really started getting real when I started seeing all that getting canceled, and because people didn't really know how to judge it. You know, is this a mild thing? Is this going to take over? No one knew it was such a global thing. And then when it hit, people like ourselves were just like, wow, now what? You know, so it's heavy.
Wow. And Dirk, you're in North Hollywood, I believe, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And all the California folks are in another straight line across my screen. This is creepy in a way. Yeah.
Technology is scary, man.
Man, I don't know how do it know. I have no idea. But what's going on with you, Dirk?
Well, yeah. So as David was saying earlier, we came home from a European tour just before everything hit, and then we were actually supposed to start tracking our next album with Megadeth, and David and I were scheduled to go down to Nashville to do that, and that didn't end up happening because everything started shutting down. And yeah, man, I mean, same as everybody. I'm just enjoying this time at home. I have my wife, my 2 dogs, my cat, so I've been spending time with them. As Victor said, going through closets and discovering things that I didn't know I had, and trying to find new spots for them, and of course playing a lot of drums. Luckily, I have some session gigs and things that I already had scheduled, so I still have a little bit of work right now. But other than that, it's just wait and see. I mean, this kind of event really kind of shows you that things we might take for granted, are not. Like, this world is fragile. Something can happen like this, and everything we're used to doing and that we kind of expect is going to happen all of a sudden is not. So it forces you to reevaluate a little bit, how to manage your life, I guess. And my wife and I, she decided to just buy a bunch of seeds, and we bought some pots, and we started like planting potatoes and radishes in the yard, and did some of the stuff that, we about for a long time, but never got around to doing, because like most of you, I'm often gone. I'm often 6, 7, 8 months of the year. I'm not here. So this was a good time, and this is a good time to kind of tackle a few things like that and enjoy them in the process. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at.
Wow. I one thing, that and I'll kind of speak for Dave and Sandro. When this started to go down, they gave us basically a week at Berkeley and said we need to shift everything that we're doing in the classroom, and we need to figure out how to go remote with it or online. And everybody was terrified. I was terrified. How are we going to do this? How do you satisfy the students' needs? How is this going to work? How the world's falling apart, and how do we keep our little part of it together? And what I'm realizing through all of this, and that's been a month ago now, and we're really adaptable. The human species is amazing, and our ability to learn and our ability to kind of be a chameleon, and that's another thing about bass and drums that's so cool, because that's what we do. You know, we're supportive, and we create the tapestry for everybody else to kind of paint on. But this was a real quandary to me. But what I've learned through it, and especially seeing events like this and seeing students getting what they need around the world, and is that as bad as all of this is, I think there's a lot of good that we're going to realize at the end of it. Now, tragedy is never, to me, never a quote good thing, but what we can learn from it, I think, is. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing friends of mine that I haven't seen in a while, some in quite a while, and we're all hanging out. I mean, this is great. Danny, like, are you enjoying your time, or are you just, is this, it is unique for you to have this kind of time where, I imagine.
Yeah, it was like Vic said, I'm sitting around my house, and I think this is the longest I have actually stayed at home since I was probably 12 years old or something like that, maybe even earlier, you know, so it's pretty nuts. But the timing was really good for me too, because I just had another son born like 2 weeks ago. So it's cool.
Oh,
Congrats.
I'm in heaven right
Congratulations.
now, you know. It couldn't have worked out better in a way. But thank you. But, yeah, so I'm loving being at home right now. It's worked out really well for me, and I'm just here playing on my practice pad and keeping my wrist moving and trying to, you know, stay abreast of things going on as much as I can. And I got a new drum set right at the end of our last tour, so I'm going to be heading into the studio and putting that all together and work out a new rig for the next tour, and just kind of keep things progressing however I can and practicing. So that's, you know, whatever I can do to make the time useful, I am.
Yeah.
How
Anybody
many,
else?
how many kids is that now, Danny?
How many what?
Yeah, how many children?
Oh, this is my second.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I've got a 4-year-old and this guy. You know?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Young.
Vic has a lot of experience homeschooling, right?
Oh boy.
I should say Holly has a lot of experience, and you're absolutely right. They're brilliant kids. You just, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's the best.
Takes a lot of work, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all our kids, all 4 of them were homeschooled.
Wow.
Up until, you know, the last few years, our younger ones have started going to a private school. But yeah, it's a lot of work, man.
Yeah.
And 2 are in college.
That's pretty much why I was going so much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, paying for college. You know, finally they're in college and private school. Homeschooling wasn't so expensive. You know, but now, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. Anybody else? How's it, Dave Ellison? Are you finding some benefits in all of this, or kind of?
Well, you know, it's nice. Unfortunately, my kids are actually grown up now. My son's 24, just finishing his MBA. He was actually working for a local concert promoter here in town. So he'd come home every day and just start to see things being pushed back and shows being canceled. A lot of like kind of classic rock stuff. And my daughter is actually at ASU in the nursing degree program. So she's right on the front line. I mean, every day we get, you get, which is kind of nice. You can get like real proper medical information that's not politically and financially slanted from the news. So I just go to her. I said, Athena, what's the deal? This is what I heard. What do you think? And so it's kind of nice to get some, stuff right from from the educational community there. But, we're all home, and it's kind of, we found our separate rooms. I'm in this room right here, which is my home office. And quite honestly, I come home, I'm in here most of the time anyway, working, doing, we got our coffee company and our record label and just other solo things that I work on. This is now my video studio this way, but if I move my laptop over there, that becomes my recording studio. So I've got kind of 2 in 1 in my room. But yeah, so that's, and it's interesting, I've actually, I've got, like Dirk was saying, we've got this Megadeth record ready to go. So I've been sitting here practicing with that, which has been nice. I've got a solo album I'm writing, and which is pretty much written, and those guys are all over in Italy and London. My singer's in Green Bay. So we're doing a lot of the same kind of stuff, just sort of working remotely. It's one of those things though that, man, I hate phoning in records, man. And it's, you know, in fact, that was intentionally what we're doing with the new Megadeth record, being in a room together, spending time. You know, we made our earlier records, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying, Rest in Peace, and all those, you know, these fan favorite records. We made them all in a room together. You know, we all lived in LA, so we'd drive to rehearsal every day. We'd write them. We'd be in the studio recording. And there, just to me, there's just, I think, especially in metal music, there's a feeling now to get away from these Pro Tooled, everything has to be perfect, these mechanical machine gun records. I think we're done. We're tired of hearing them. I know being in a band, we're tired of making those kind of records, you know, and to some degree, you know, there's always sort of a precision in the metal world, and stuff always goes through, you know, kind of digital processes and stuff to make it as good as you can. But I think there's a desire for a human element, you know, and ironically, it would come at this time when I think finding human connection is probably the thing we're craving the most. You know, the old, proverb, you know, no man is an island unto himself, you know. So it's I think that is the thing, and I think musically we're searching for that too. It's fun watching people collaborate online, even if they're having to shoot their own video and then they sort of put it together, you know, to give the appearance that everybody's playing together. The Jimmy Fallon style, as I call it, you know, they do a lot of that. But it's just there's a fun humanness that's happening right now. You know, with just the world that we live in right now. And I think there's going to be a new normal. You know, I think this kind of will be a new normal. I think this is going to be sort of a sustainable platform moving forward, you know, because this isn't just going to one day end. It's going to sort of tail off, you know, and, you know, a lot of these kind of connections that I think we're all finding around the world with each other. I hope they continue, because I think it's kind of a cool new way to be doing stuff moving forward.
Yeah, very cool.
Anybody else want to chime in on that? Or
Yes, amen to the stiff, stale record making. You know, in our world, it's very, especially these days with some of the producers you work with, it's got to be so perfect, and that's such a great thing to hear you say that, because it's really getting on my nerves lately. And that's what happened to the, like you say, getting in a room together and just playing. And we're all human. We all make mistakes, you know, and it's the record's so polished thing. Our last record we put out, I actually went in and fought to lock some things down, which was, you know, Nick Raskulinix, the producer, was going like, what do you do? You're kind of out right here. I know, but there's a sway that's kind of cool. So I was actually fighting to leave some of the, you know, swaggers in there, just because I didn't want it to be perfect.
Good. Nice.
yeah,
Good.
last week we had the great bass player Anthony Jackson, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and he was talking about that very thing. Is that which track was it off Steely Dan? Sandro, do you remember, or Victor?
I don't remember the name. I'm sorry, Steve. I know what you're talking about.
It could be El Gaucho, or it's
I
from
think
that
it was
album. But it was a title track, and Anthony, he was like, well, they took my part away and they replaced it with another one. And the way he speaks, and he says, you know what, the reason was they said it was too perfect. And only Anthony Jackson, you know, who really can play perfectly, acquiesced. Most of us would be like, oh God, I got replaced, you know, but rarely do we get replaced for being too good. And he really made a good point for that, because and I believe Walter Becker played bass on it, who, you know, maybe not, he's Walter Becker, but he's not Anthony Jackson. But that's what worked for the track. It needed some of that swagger that Ray refers to, which basically means I don't know what that means, but it doesn't mean exactly accurate, metronomically accurate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
And the thing is, right.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Ray.
No, I was just saying, when you go see the bands live and they're, you know, they have this perfect sounding record, you go see them live, you're like, whoa, that sounds nothing like what I just heard on the radio, or what, you know. So it's like, I always had that thing of like, getting a room jam so you can fix stuff. There's obviously, you know, this record's gonna live on longer than all of us, so you want to fix it so there's not blatant mistakes, but still have it sound like you, so it doesn't, when you go see that band live.
Yeah, to me, that's where the soul is. That's what you feel when it's imperfect.
Absolutely.
You know, and people feel that. For me, it's like when I was a kid and I'd walk into someone's house and they had plastic on the tables, plastic over the couch, and you feel like you can't touch anything. You know, they want to keep everything so perfect that you're just uncomfortable. And sometimes the music makes me feel like that if everything is fixed. You know?
Good analogy.
Yep.
Everybody's been to that house.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
A great example is I was trying to find it just now. I couldn't find it, but there was somebody, a producer posted a video that you might have all seen or not, where he's quantizing some of John Bonham's parts just to show
Rick Beato. Yeah.
lining that up to the grid ruins it completely.
Yeah.
And that's me, is like, that says it all right there.
Wow.
Takes away all the swing, all the groove, you know, it's like everything is in the imperfections and the little swagger like range, and that's all right there. It's in how it floats and how John, in that case particularly, makes it float in his own way that nobody else could do exactly like that. And that's what makes him him, and that's what makes all of us who we are. And people forget that, you know, people get obsessed with lining things up, and it's a shame.
You know, there were some live track, the studio tracks from YYZ, you know, the Rush song from Moving Pictures, the same thing, and they soloed up and they had the bass tracks, and you could tell, you could hear when the bass track was soloed up where Geddy punched the licks, right? And I was like, oh man, he punched it, right? But it was awesome because it had a different level, it had a different tone. The licks were killer, you know, and they weren't perfect. They were sort of like slathered in there, you know, and you could really hear, obviously in the final mix, it sounded amazing, but when he soloed the track up, it, you know, it sounds like probably most of our solo tracks, there is humanness in there, you know, and even in the digital domain, there's humanness that happens. And it was one of my favorite records, and by one of my favorite bass players, Geddy Lee. You know, it was just cool to hear the humanness, the slap and the slop in the fingers. It's just sort of slathering grease all over it, you know, and it was cool to hear that.
Yeah.
For Justin and I, now that we've been on the road playing the stuff off our new record that we've finished this year, the conversations we always have, if anything, every day before we go on stage, it's like kind of trying to figure out how to, you know, it's just a feeling that happens when you're doing that recording, and then you know, our time is slipping and pushing and pulling and stuff, and so to get it to feel that natural every night is kind of a challenge. So we end up talking, well, hey, like when it gets to this chorus, should we try to go up maybe 1 BPM here or 2 BPM there, or like when it hits this part, you know, and just long as we have a conversation about it, it makes us aware of it. It helps the groove a lot, just to, okay, we're going to lay back on this little section to get the feeling just right, so it's pumping, you know. And that's the conversations we have more than anything else about execution on stage and recreating the stuff that's on the album.
But that's one thing, and the title of this, because you always have to come up with a title for something, but big gigs, big stages, big skills, and something you mentioned, Danny, that you know, when you've played at the Baked Potato and then you played on the huge stages that you guys play on, there's so much. Can you talk, or any of you, all of you have played arenas and huge stages, but there's a skill set, a level of listening that's maybe different, it may not. I'd love to hear. Justin, can you enlighten us a little of what goes into that? How do you guys lock up? Are you playing to a click? How do you go up or down 1 or 2 dB? Is it eye contact, or you just do it? Any of those?
Yeah, well, I mean, for starters, just to follow up on what Danny said, when we record our albums, we don't use a click at all in the first place. Like the drum tracks get recorded first. We've rehearsed the songs for, obviously, as everyone says, 13 years or whatever it was. And you know, they have a natural flow to them. Like some parts, they're different time signatures. We've tried before with the click. It just doesn't work. Some parts naturally speed up a bit. You know, there's a drum solo in this section. It needs to get exciting. It needs to almost fall apart and get out of control. So we just let that happen when we record. I mean, we try and reel in parts that are losing the plot, you know, but we basically let it be what it is. And then for my benefit and Adam's benefit, we actually map a tempo map to those drums sometimes that we have now recorded.
So
'Cause
when
there'll
you say
be-
tempo map, I'm sorry, you mean you're inputting the tempo map into Pro Tools or into whatever DAW?
Yeah. So there'll be, you know, like there's going to be long sections that are a little more ambient that are going to be hard for me to follow. I mean, I'm not able to keep up with Danny in the live situation to track all my bass parts at the same time or have the, you know, the necessarily, the sound that I want to keep forever. So I do end up redoing my bass parts. But I'm going to have to follow something where there's no kick drum, let's say, or no snare. So we do that in a lot of sections, and we'll like artificially lay in a tempo, a click that stretches in some parts. So basically that's for my benefit, to be able to play where there's nothing really to follow, you know. But then the result is, once we got the track done, it's kind of like maintain that feel to it. So we go into the live situation, the songs are quite familiar in that way. You know, there are sections where it does speed up a little bit towards the end of, you know, the drum solo. And I'll like, you know, my monitor mix is very important to me, to be able to just follow those little nuances in Danny's drumming that I'm familiar with, but I need to be really locked in with. I'm like, okay, here it comes, this is the flurry. You know, and I'm just holding down a groove. I'll basically, you know, I'll preempt that a little bit, so I arrive right on the downbeat of the next section, which perhaps has a different feel to it and even slows down a little bit, but I'm not suddenly slowing down. I'm already preempting it, you know, from just being used to how those songs, you know, ebb and flow basically. So yeah, and you know, in the big arenas and stuff, I just I know you know, some people think I'm crazy, but I can't do the in-ear monitors. I have to have a live situation around me. I have big cabinets behind me, and I have big monitors in front of me and to the side of me. And my approach is, as long as it doesn't get to a level where it hurts, you know, I should be okay, you know.
Just short of that pain threshold, right?
Yeah, you know, my wife will tell you different, that my hearing's going. Maybe that's a little selective. But,
What's that?
my wife will tell you different, that my hearing is affected. Oh yeah, but yeah, so that's, you know, basically I like to be able to hear Danny really clearly when we're playing live, almost like we're in the room just playing together, and everything else smatters on top. But obviously really important for me and him to have that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Very good.
Billy,
Yeah.
I'm curious, and it brings up something that really surprises me. I mean, if I had to not look at Wikipedia and not look at your guys' interviews, like some of the, and I'm going back to Justin and Danny real quick, but that huge space in some of the intros and some of the textures and the new records and the old records, I just find it hard to believe that you didn't use a click. But that's.
I know we'll use for an intro or something. We'll have to, you know what I mean? Like some little parts that are attached on, we'll use a click occasionally.
Yeah.
But
Billy, you've been making records with a lot of different people since Victor Wooten saw you with David Lee Roth in Hampton, Virginia, back in
80s.
the 80s. Yeah. So what's been your experience as far as recording with a click and the whole recording process, and how it's evolved since that, you know, Skyscraper days,
Well,
even Alice days?
yeah, for me, I'm all about the drums, and I got to watch the drums and the drummer. And even when I've done live shows where there are clicks and the drummer's got it in his ear, I don't have it. I'm watching him. So that way I'm locked into what he's doing. Even if he misses or moves on that click, I'm still with him.
Right.
And from the early days, of course, we didn't have that. All the Eat 'em and Smile, Skyscraper, all the Talus records, and the first two Mr. Big's records were all done. They're all analog. There's no click track on any of that. So, but in all those cases, I watched the drummer like a hawk. I'm very lucky to play with amazing drummers. Ray Luzier and I get together, and I watch him and watch every nuance and every finesse thing that he does, and watch it closely and try to lock up a noise or a click or a pop or a hit or a space, something that just melds together with what he's doing. Victor, I saw Victor and Dennis Chambers play together in Milan a few years ago. Mind-blowing. And it was, I had the great honor and fortune of playing with Dennis also. And he's another guy. I just watch him so close. I play with him in the baked potato, and I'm a foot away from him. And I'm on him. I just watch him. And for me, that's my main thing. So even if there's a click or whatever's going on, I'm still watch the drummers. In a big arena show on a larger stage, I can always hear the snare drum. My hearing is down quite a bit after 50 years in front of an SVT or so. But as long as I hear that snare drum and bass drum and catch that hi-hat, you'll see me on stage. I'm always running over to the drum, especially in a little bit more complicated parts. I want to be right there with them and lock that together. So it's a small stage or large stage. As a bass player, it's all about the drums. You know, people say, "Oh, what about this guitar player or that guitar player?" That's cool. I love them, and they're fantastic. That's the frosting. I'm really more concerned with the cake. And
that's why we only have cake here today. We left the frosting. You know, that's somebody else's deal. But I love that analogy. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's important. And with Ray, who I'm glad joined us today, we've done a couple of jams in Hollywood. We go up on a Sunday night and just play some copy tunes. And it's a couple of times you get that ESP thing happening between drummer and bass player. And I've been lucky to have it with Ray, with Dennis, with Pat Torpy and Mr. Big, with Mike Portnoy and Winery Dogs and Sons of Apollo, where they do a thing and they've never done it before. And you do the exact same thing at the exact same time. And you look at each other like, how did you know? Yeah, but how did you know? It's this weird ESP thing that happens. That is my favorite thing to happen on stage. When a guy does a move and you do the exact same move, unprepared, unrehearsed, and it just happens. So you're kind of thinking the same rhythmically, stylistically, whatever. And for me, that's such a joy. And on a big stage, it's a little tougher because it's, it's echoey and wild, but it can still happen. But I can still always run over near the drum riser and get up close to where the drummer is and be able to hear him well and make things like that happen. So that's where I'm at on that.
Isn't it true also, Billy, that when those moments happen, often they never happen again? That's a special moment,
Yeah.
But you spend the next couple times trying to recreate it and make it happen instead of going somewhere and letting something else happen.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, oftentimes on the big stages, it's more of a big show performance mindset, right? We're going into it more as performers. There's video technology, there's lighting cues, there's everything. Everybody's so much farther away. Sometimes you can't even see your tech because they're down off the stage, back behind some bank of, amplifiers or something. And yet on the small stages, we use the baked potato, that the small stages, there's this intimacy that happens where you're right there and you can really feel those nuances. And it's not so much about big performance and big grandiose show things so that the people in the back of the hall can see it. I remember a manager early on when we were coming out of the clubs to the arenas, he said, remember, this move in the club needs to be this move in the arena, And I remember that just kind of that thinking, that everything has to project bigger. And in the club, or the intimate setting, I should say, and it could even be a recording studio where you're right next to each other versus in isolated rooms, but maybe we're all together in a room. There really is this intimacy, really seeing each other's eyeballs, and that there again, that humanness, there's that connection that happens in just such a much different way. And it's not about having to have your mix be so perfect, and it's like, I can't really hear myself, but I'm going for it anyway,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. Hey, Mike's on. So, a lot of questions coming in, and I'm curious about one of them. There's quite a few people asking about how you drummers and bass players play in odd times. But one that I'm really interested in is someone's asking about, like, how important is it to know music theory? Are you using it? Someone even asked about, like, solfege. Is that important? But
Soul food?
well, that is important. Yes,
That's important, man.
that is important. You know, but, like, do you guys, like, in the studio or live? Do any of you read music? Do you know theory? If you know it, are you thinking it? And I know some of you know it because I saw Megadeth. I have to share my favorite to date experience at Berkeley was in Marvulio's class, Dave's class, watching Megadeth, watching the Megadeth ensemble. So at Berkeley College of Music, they're studying. There's a class on Megadeth music, and the ensemble is playing in this small room. You talk about volume, loud.
They were headbanging. They rehearsed headbanging. Dave,
Hair, everything. But this Megadeth ensemble, under the direction of Dave Marvulio, they're rocking it out. But sitting over here in these chairs are you guys, is Megadeth. Sitting there watching the Megadeth ensemble. And I just felt so, like, amazing that I got to witness that. To date, my favorite Berkeley experience. So with that, you guys are icons, and this is all of you, legends, and you do what you do, and we love it, and it comes so naturally, but we know that there's a lot of work behind it. A lot of these people out here are asking about the behind the scenes, the odd time signatures, theory. Are you using it? Do you know it? Do you read it? Is it as important? Solfege, you know, Berkeley, they teach conducting. How do you guys think about any of that stuff? Or even so, the fact that now you're being taught in a curriculum in school. How's that feel? I mean, you know, is it teachable? Is it, well, I know it's teachable because I see Dave doing it.
Well, maybe if me and Dirk ever go to Berkeley College, we can audition into the Megadeth band. Hopefully we get in.
hey, can y'all see this screen share right now?
Oh, yeah, there we are.
Wow.
There it is.
Listening intently while the headbanging in the background. Yeah, that's funny.
Awesome.
I think I may have been jamming with him there, but well, you know what was interesting about that, and Victor, I appreciate you being there for that, because what was fun was to watch our guitar player Kiko dissect the solo of this song Tornado of Souls, and actually Marty Friedman was the one who had recorded the solo. One of my favorite guitar solos, certainly of the Megadeth stuff, just ever. I remember sitting at the recording in Studio C at Rumbo Recorders out in Canoga Park when he had just laid it down, and sitting down and just hearing it is just one of those moments. And it's fun in your own band when you hear a performance that just puts goosebumps on your hair stand up. You're like, oh my God, this is amazing. You know, that sounds better than we really are. You know, those moments. That's so fun when you're making records. And to watch Kiko dissect, you know, the transitions from major to minor and to all the different little nuances, basically soloing over the chord changes. And Marty Friedman is a phenomenal guitar player and certainly, you know, an educated musician. I don't even know that he probably maybe knew that at the time, because he just goes by feel. Yet to watch Kiko, you know, now a member of our group, to sit there and watch him, who is a very educated musician, and when he's not doing Megadeth stuff, he basically has jazz videos up and he's watching all kinds of Miles Davis and Jaco Pastorius videos and stuff. To watch him dissect even our own music was, and I know no theory and I know stuff, and I was just showing earlier, I actually have my last time I was with Steve at Berkeley, I actually have my bass book here that I've been doing some sight reading, albeit very poorly.
Careful, Dave, you got a reputation to uphold.
I know. Well, I've been working on Tiny Mike right here before we got on this thing. So, but you know, it's funny with reading. I don't read that much for the purposes of my professional needs. I'll sketch out little charts and write little notes and cheat sheets and stuff, just so I kind of have memory joggers on things. But when I'm recording, not for performing live, but for recording and writing a new track. But it's funny with sight reading, just even this week, getting back, opening the books up and reading. how quickly it all comes back. And I guess it's like anything, the more you do it, the better it, like just this morning, opening a book up is like, it came back pretty quickly, and all of a sudden my proficiency was better. So I think like anything, the more you do it, the better you get. And there is theory to all of our music, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't always think about it, especially once we're on stage performing it. I'm not thinking about that. In fact, I'm thinking about performance mode. So I think there's different phases. The writing, I sort of try to forget all the theory, period, to just let the thing flow. Then when we're in recording it, sometimes I bring the theory back in so I can communicate a little better with the other guys in the band. And then when we take it to the stage, I try to forget all of that and just go out and just perform. Yeah.
Well, one of my, and I'm glad Vic brought that up, because it does tie Berkeley into it. And Dave Marvulio, in putting these groups together, they academically attack your guys' music. I mean, transcriptions, writing out the rhythms. And I'm a firm believer, some people say it's got to be jazz, it's got to be classical, or it's not real. But to me, it's all the same 12 notes in Western music. I mean, really, it is. And it's ultimately, it's the same rhythms, the dot, 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 depending on how you play it, 8th notes, 16th notes, where you put them, but they're still the same fundamental ingredients. So why can't it all be approached academically? And it's surprising how hard that is to convince people of that sometimes. To me, the only difference is the intent and the tones. Like if you take one of Billy's solos and you play it on a violin, it sounds like Paganini. And I'm not, that's not an insult, Billy, by the way, that's a compliment. But seriously, I mean, you take one of Danny's solos and you transpose it to snare drum and timpani and cymbal and things like that, and it sounds like Shostakovich in a way, and I'm just using these names because they sound cool. But what Dave does at Berkeley and what I saw at that thing, and if you guys, I don't know if you remember this, but you see Mustaine there? Are you getting
wrong picture, Steve? I see it. I don't see.
Oh, I'm
See
sorry.
your calendar.
Oh, well.
your calendar right now.
Yeah.
Because you need breakfast milk.
Anyway, I'll show you the picture in a second, but Dave Mustaine also grabbed a guitar and to the student, and sometimes I get scared with Dave. I don't know why. Maybe you can explain that to me, Ellison, but working
Have
at
that effect on people. Yeah.
working at an academic institution, that could go either way. And I was scared, and they had photographers there and everything. And Dave looks at the guitar player and he says, "Come over here." And he picked up the guitar and he was showing him, he said, "When I wrote that song, I used this fingering because," and he started to go into this explanation. And I was like sitting there going, "Oh my goodness." And then the heart of a teacher came out. He looked at the guy and said, "Are you going to remember this?" It's just like I'd hear somebody, Victor, saying, "Write this down." He says, "Are you going to remember this?" He said, "Get your phone out and make a video of this, or else you might forget it." And I was like, yes, yes. The heart of a teacher. And to me, people can talk about, I love to teach or I don't like to teach or whatever it is, but I really learned something that day that people you would least likely expect have the heart of a teacher. And I don't really know how to quantify that or tell you what that is, but it was just amazing to me. And
yeah, it's still my most top experience at Berkeley so far was to witness that interaction. Amazing. And still some of my favorite times at Berkeley still is when I get to visit Marvulio's classes. Because the way he's teaching how to use a pick, how to stand so that 30 years from now your back's not torn up, just so many things. And what we think of music theory only deals with 12 notes, right? And we put all the stuff theory into 12 notes, whether it's ear training, modes, but the theory that Dave Marvulio is finding to teach this rock and metal and Meshuggah and corn, all this. For me, even the first time I'm seeing the theory behind it. And yeah, there's notes theory also, but there's a whole lot more. How you're holding the pick. Is it an upstroke versus a downstroke? Stuff I never thought about. I just thought I had to play the right harmony through a blues or over the changes of giant steps. But he's going so deep that I can take these theories. Basically, it's expanded my knowledge of what we call theory. You know, like in other words, you know, jazz musicians, we've got music theory, but we have zero performance theory. Like, don't know what to do on a stage. Just stand there and expect the audience to get it. I like to say we've developed this musical gift, but have no idea of how to deliver the gift to the audience.
Well, and Vic, another thing happened at that moment. You actually got a gig out of that because Chris Adler from Lamb of God was sitting and playing drums with us. And next thing, you know, Chris hits me, goes, "Hey, do you got Victor Wooten's number?" And next thing, you two were in a band together, and I think going to India. So there's another thing about it isn't just the notes; it's about, again, the humanness, the connection.
Wait
you know?
a minute. I didn't know about this. Usually, the chair of the department gets a little commission on side gigs like that.
10% agent. There you go. Come on, hook it up.
Vic, hey, and I'm sure Dave, there'll be a Tool ensemble if there's not already. Dave, do you know?
There should be.
It goes in and out because we change it each kind of semester depending on what students are looking to do. So I think they did it last semester. There's probably going to be another group of students that want to do it again.
Right, because you guys remember when Danny and Justin came to Berkeley, the guys from the Tool ensemble, remember they were sitting in the front row, and I let them come back in my office a little bit and we were hanging out. But I want to say another thing because it reminds me of that. The heart, you know, everybody thinks rock and metal and it's all dark and it's all, you know, it's edge and it's intensity. But I can look at everybody that I've known for years out there, and some I haven't known that long, and see some of the most giving people ever. And when Tool came to Boston, it was completely sold out. Students, of course, the room was packed, and Justin and Danny were just coming in because they had some time before sound check and just hanging out with us. And word gets around quickly at Berkeley if Megadeth's on campus or Tool's on campus. But the way you guys came in and poured it out for these students and really shared some enlightenment, and not to mention the concert sold out. And I don't know if it was Justin's idea or Shelley's but the next thing I know, we're giving away 10 tickets to the show that night. But the way we gave them away, this tells me how much of an impact, Justin, your bass playing has on even our Berkeley students. And it was so phenomenal because we were trying to think, well, how do we give 10 tickets away and there's all these people in the audience? And I said, let's just experiment with something. Play one note from one of Tool's bass lines.
It was pretty funny. It was pretty funny because I very quickly realized that they all start with the same note. So we managed to give 10 tickets away.
Now, there you go. You're underselling that one because from where I was sitting, you played one note and all these hands shot up, and maybe you'd have to play two notes, but from two notes, not to mention your tone, but your attitude and the way you deliver each note, but they immediately recognize the whole song and they're singing the whole song. These are college music students who, you know,
At Berkeley.
At Berkeley, digging that deep into you guys. So that also tells me, you know, a lot of schools are interested in teaching you what they think you want to know. And one thing I learned quickly after getting to Berkeley was that I want our department teaching the music that you want to be, that you listen to, the stuff that you can relate to, because I'm looking at everybody out there knowing that if I could transcribe one of your parts to a different song, various songs, I would learn an immense amount. I mean, Danny, like, it's so funny. It's just a little anecdotal backstage story, but I went to see Tool in San Antonio last October, and Justin and I had only met once, but he was so gracious to me, invites me down in the labyrinth of security. I had to, like, you know, basically they almost took my temperature to see if I was the right temperature to get down there. But I did get down there, and Justin says, "Come on in and meet our drummer, Danny." And I go over, and there's this guy. All I see is a music stand and this rudiments book, and he's playing these rudiments, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I get it, Justin. I'm from Berkeley. You're just trying to impress me. Tool's drummer is down there. He's just, and I'm like looking at it. No, he's like, he's doing the deal. And I go and stand behind him, and I'm looking at him reading these rhythms and pretty complex things. And I said, you guys got me. And I thought you were, as you say across the pond, you were having a go at me. And it turns out, Danny, I found out about your academic background, which is amazing. Can you talk about that for a minute? Like what the things you practice, and I'm sure Dirk and Ray can chime in on, but drummers seem to be, everybody makes these drummer jokes. And granted, you deserve a lot of them.
Yeah, that's going to say it's not.
But seriously, from an academic perspective, you guys dig into rhythms and reading notation. I think more than bass players, definitely more than guitar players. Can you talk, Danny? Can you talk about it a little bit? And then
there's all the different avenues you can take. But I mean, when I grew up, I had a lot of classical music and big band stuff playing around me from my dad. So I mean, I was always trying to find the path that I was looking for was a little more snobby, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but I just was always into all the prog bands like Yes and Genesis and all that stuff. So that was what I wanted to play, things that were a little more complicated, I guess. So I always took lessons and then played in the big band in high school. And then when I got it to go to college, and I played in the orchestra and the big band and university level also. So it just kept snowballing and kept going forward in that way. And when I was ever playing in bands, I just never wanted to be the weak link. And, like Justin and Adam, when they come up with some weird thing and weird time, and they're not really so educated about it, but it allows them just this freedom, I think, to come up with the weirdest ideas. And I don't want to belittle it. I just try to go with it. And if you have a vocabulary that you've worked on by studying all these different possibilities and Indian music, classical music, whatever, fusion stuff, then you're prepared to do the song justice or the riff justice when those moments happen. So I've just always wanted to be prepared for any musical moment that would happen. So I try to, keep studying and keep abreast of anything I can, and listening a lot. I just try to listen to as many things possible and a lot of different influences from all over so I can do the songs justice. That's my goal. I think that's more important maybe for a drummer to do that than maybe some other instrument. If you're composing the thing, it's kind of your idea is set there, but I just want to make sure I can take it as far as I can take it and expound upon it in however I can.
do you write those parts out as you learn them? Because I mean,
yeah, we have never really written anything out like that. Sometimes if we get stuck, then I'll actually count and go, hey, what time is this? And a lot of time we just kind of feel it. We don't really even count it out because it's more of a feeling thing. But as the songs develop and we want to find more possibilities, we'll go, okay, well, this is in 21, so we can play 3 7s or 7 3s or different combinations of.
Hey, they don't even teach 21 at Berkeley.
Ball lines and whatnot.
I don't think they teach 21 at Berkeley.
Yeah.
They may teach 7 and do it 3 times, but I'm not sure I think of it as.
Well, that's Justin's department.
I actually sent a riff to Danny the other night. We were talking about doing this, and I was just making sure I could actually play bass. I thought I better pick it up and practice for a while. I came up with a riff, and it sounded really interesting to me and quite odd, the timing of it. It's just a thing that cycles around. But I sent it to Dan, and I was like, I haven't even tried to count this out. Do you know what it is? He's like, let's not count it. Let's jam it first. Let's not even think about it.
Yeah, no.
Let's just not nail it down yet. And I don't know, just keep the possibilities of it alive until you have to kind of, once you've settled on it, then you can kind of figure out a way of explaining it, perhaps for the guitar player or the singer. But yeah.
Is that how a lot of the songs come together? Somebody has a riff, sends it to someone else, and you add to it, or maybe it's both, or maybe somebody comes in with a whole song. Does someone give you your parts, or are the parts yours? You get to interpret it your way. How do you
We
guys?
keep it pretty simple with like building blocks, like you said. It's normally just very basic, stripped down riffs, ideas. When we come together as Tool, we try not to overdevelop our individual ideas. So we just come in with a pile of building blocks and share them with each other to see what the other person receives from that information. You know, like how do they hear it? I mean, we wrote a song, like I guess it could be our pop song, The Pop. And I played the riff to Danny, and he heard the downbeat in a completely different place to me. You know, like 1, 2, 3, like it came in it changed the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
Like you were playing with Dennis Chambers, maybe.
yeah. I mean, and that informed like different parts of the song. You know, we're like, now we have that option as well. You know, because I'd never heard it that way. So we just really try and keep it open until we've finally put it all together.
That's very smart, because Justin, if you had told him where the beat was, he may not have ever heard it in his original way.
Right.
Definitely not. Definitely,
Right.
yeah.
So allowing him to hear your song with no preconceived idea or anything, he gets a first impression.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you say, okay, here's the drum part, here's the guitar part, then everyone does, you know, it kind of eliminates their first chance to hear it. That's very, very cool.
Victor, didn't you tell me once that the Flecktones have a song where all four of you have a different place where one is, but you play the song? Everybody has a different one.
Multiple songs. And it's like, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, really. I mean, and that's what gives it the sound, is because everybody, you know, approaches it their own way. I love hearing you talk about that, Justin, because that's the way Bela Fleck, you know, the Flecktones, the greatest metal band ever, you know. No.
Metal banjo.
Right, a banjo player, right? But Bela that's one of the things I learned from him, even back when I met him in the 80s. He would play something and not tell me anything. Say, hey, check this out. No key, no downbeat. And in the banjo is really weird, because the intervals of every string are different. It's not straight fourths or whatever. And they'll hit that little thumb in that high string or the low string in a weird place, and it sounds like the downbeat, and it sounds like the root. And so I'd come in playing with where I thought it was, and the same thing you just talked about. It would send the song down a different road, and in most cases he liked it because he never thought of that. And then, like you say, now we have options.
Mm-hmm.
So we would immediately record it on a cassette, you know, just before we forgot it. Rarely ever writing it down. We'd write it down if we needed to. Usually the person playing the melody, like the horn player or Howard on harmonica, they would write things down. But my brother Roy, who plays drums, myself, we just never wrote things down. We can, but we just wanted to learn it internally first. But I just like that idea of letting someone hear your riff without telling them anything first, and letting them interpret it. That's really, it's a bold move for you, because you came up with it, but you'll let him, you know, you don't have to direct everyone and this is what it is. No, don't do that. You just let them interpret it, and that's cool. And I think that's what really makes a band, rather than it's just my band and I hire you. You know, I love that.
I agree.
Hey, Danny, just what book was that, those rudiments you were reading? Because I think you said you do that every night.
Well, I try to warm up at least a half hour before I go on every night, just to get the blood flowing. I'm trying to remember. I think it was an old John S. Pratt, like rudimental solo book.
That's what it was. It's red. I think.
Yeah. It's a pretty like intermediate level thing. It's not real advanced, but it's great to warm up with, because, you know, it just goes through pretty much all the 26 rudiments, you know, and it's a good thing to do for me anyway. Get the blood.
Ray or Dirk, do you do that kind of thing, or are you going to admit it publicly, like you?
No, absolutely. Actually, I have this Charlie Wilcoxon drum solo book.
Oh yeah, I had that book.
Yeah, that I really think is great for, keeping up with the rudiments and stuff. It's pretty intense. I haven't gotten very deep in the book, just so you know. But yeah, no, totally. And I'd like to address something too about the whole, Danny mentioned vocabulary, and that's kind of how I see the theoretical aspect of the music, as we talked a lot about now, which is totally true, kind of feeling things. But at the same time, having the understanding of it and being able to read and write. For me, for example, in my life as a musician, it's helped me tremendously. And I'll cite the example of Megadeth, which David can attest to. I was on tour with my former band Soilwork when I got the call to go, play with Megadeth. It's now a little over 4 years ago. And I was going to come home from that tour I was on and have about 10 days to learn the Megadeth set. And that's the exact situation where being able to, listen to the music, but also make my charts, which I've gotten pretty proficient at over the years, is extremely helpful, because all of a sudden here's a really big gig, comes with some tension, some stress, all of a sudden, like you're with David Ellison and Dave Mustaine on a stage, and, that's a lot of feelings that you kind of have to manage and still do a good job, right? So it's a little bit intimidating. So to have my cheat sheets kind of there, and which David commented on when I walked into our rehearsal, is like, oh, you did your homework, you came prepared. And that's exactly it. And that's why I think I always tell my drum students, it's so important to, to learn that aspect of it, because you never know when you're going to find yourself in a situation where, you memorizing all that music and then dealing with all the emotions that come with it, it can get to the point where you start making mistakes and messing up, and you don't want to do that, right? So I deal with that a lot. I mean, with Megadeth, there's a vast catalog, and just on this last tour we were on in Europe, at some point, Dave goes, "Hey, do you guys want to play this song tonight?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." And then next thing I do is like go listen to the song, write my chart, and that night we were playing it, and I never played the song before. Heard it probably at some point, but it's not something we usually play. So again, another situation where if I didn't have that tool to kind of help me visualize what I'm doing and remember the structure and stuff, it would be a lot more stressful. So that's kind of why I appreciate being able to write and read rhythm, and keeping up with that, like we were saying, by like Danny does, warming up with books, etc. before shows.
Yeah. Ray, what's your routine?
Yeah, I got all kinds of stories with my band. with reading and, and all you guys are making such amazing points. Victor, you nailed it too with when you just pick the instrument up, just the sound that comes out of your fingers. When you can get 10 drummers to play Back in Black on a kit, and they're all going to sound 10 different ways. That's just what it is. And that's a huge, I never learned that so much until I joined Korn 13 years ago, and realized what those guys, like the producer would pick up Monkey's guitar and play the riff, and I'm like, man, that sounds like some lame rock riff from Dated or whatever. Monkey would pick it up, and just the attack he had, it was just amazing. And in both, Dirk and Danny talking about vocabulary, that's an amazing thing. When I moved to LA and I was an MI student, and then I ended up teaching there, I was pretty naive. I was just a rocker off the farm, didn't know anything, barely knew what a quarter note was. Then got handed all this vast amount of curriculum and knew how to read somewhat. And then when I started teaching there, I realized, like, wow, there's, I memorized songs so much growing up that I just said, I don't need to read. If I did a session, they would hand me a chart and a CD, and I'd just put the chart down and start listening to the CD with my headphones. And I memorized almost everything. And then, Ralph Humphrey, Joe Porcaro, all these massive instructors were my teachers at the time. I had such an amazing staff there, and they're like, and they knew I couldn't read. They knew it was my weakness. So they're always like, "Hey, Ray, come up here." And they throw a chart in front of me. All right, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I'm like, choking. They knew I sucked at it.
That is the look. We've all had that look on our face. That's the I'm sucking look for sure.
Totally, man. It's like, and I was like, man, and I'm going to prove them wrong. I can do this without reading. And then through the years, it got frustrating at times. I'm still not a great reader, but I know enough. I definitely, I'll whip out the Ted Reed syncopation book, and I'll read rudiments. And I'm not a great chart reader. Steve, I think you know that. I did a couple of rock bass classes with you there. Sorry about that.
That's why I'm freaking out. when you said MI, it all came back to me. And I didn't even remember that now. And I was just going to ask you that next. Oh, my God.
Remember? Yeah.
Yes.
Here's Steve. Steve's like this. He said, all right, Ray, I'm filling in for his rock class.
Ah.
Jim Pedersen. And he throws a chart, and the chart kept opening. And I was like, crap. And Steve's like, and I'm playing, and Steve's like, hey, man, you good? I'm like, yeah, why? I'm good.
Man, this is what happens when you get old. Like all of that is coming back to me, and I'm keep looking at you going, man, I think I know Ray from somewhere, and I'm telling the audience that I just met him today, and we played together. That had to be the early 80s, something like that?
Probably early 90s, yeah.
Early 90s, yeah.
Ralph and Joe hired me at the school because I was always complaining there's no rock programs at that time.
Right.
And Ralph called me in and Humphrey, come on, Zappa. I mean, that guy's, he's taught me so much. That's how I learned all the time. And he's like, hey, Ray, there's so many students complaining about there's not a rock curriculum. Could you present us with one? So that's what I did. I started 3 hours a week there. And then went to 33, but
yeah, we were playing.
Yeah, Berkeley.
We were playing Led Zeppelin tunes to charts. Now figure that out. I mean, we're working on reading and do, and we're all like sight reading this stuff. And I kind of joke about it, but really it's the same notes. It's the same notes that everybody plays. So why can't it be written out, and why can't we communicate that way? I remember recording with Tull, one of Danny's and my friends. I think, Danny, we talked about Doane Perry, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Doane was in Jethro Tull when I recorded with him. And Doane used to write out fills, and he would slip them to me in between. And he goes, when we get out of the chorus, play this fill. And when we're going to the outro, play this fill. And I have these little pieces of paper, not on a music stand, but just sitting off to the side. And we'd get to the last bar, and all of a sudden it was like, right into the next thing in unison. And Ian Anderson goes like, how did you guys know that? In some ways, reading can make you a hero. But Ray, thank you for bringing me back, man.
Well, yeah, I didn't know if you knew that or put that association before, but the funny thing is, for your viewers right now, I'm in a band that sold, I don't know, they're probably 42 million plus, and the first full Korn record I did, I'd be playing a part of something and like a 16th note thing on the hi-hat, and I'd go into an 8th note and Billy, the bass player, and I have the utmost respect for my band. They're some of the most amazing people and musicians on the planet, but they don't know any theory. They don't know. They sold all these records without knowing how to read. So I'd do something on the hi-hat, and Phil would go, hey man, go back to that thing. And I go, oh, you mean 16th notes? And he goes, no, the thing where you were doing two hands. And I was like, yeah, that's 16th note. But my point is, for what they do, they have this thing. There's a magic about when they pick up an instrument that only they do. And I was kind of a chameleon guy. Billy and I played in David Lee Roth at separate times. I wish we were together at the same time, but I did 8 years with Dave, and I did it like I did Time with Dave Roth. It's almost like that.
You played Time and did Time.
But I mean, like, I was kind of a chameleon, I played with Jakey Lee, I played with the DeLeo brothers from SDP, and Robert DeLeo's bass playing is like yesterday, man. He was the timekeeper of Army of Anyone. Yeah. It wasn't. I mean, I would literally watch his right hand, the way he would dig in. It was just like, I was always on top of the beat with him. And so every band or situation, I try to, adapt, obviously. When I play with Billy, he's always, we have such a great connection, and he's on fire a lot of we have a lot of the brain waves, all the same brain waves. And it's like, but my point is with Korn, it took years to really get inside of what's going on with them, because there is no theory with them. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna, because I'm looking at these bass players, Victor, Billy, Dave, and a lot of, and Justin, and all I'm looking at the questions that were mailed in and some that have been scrolling by, but everybody is talking about your various tones and your various attack like it's a recipe you put together. But I think Ray or somebody said it, you know, somebody else picks up the bass and plays that same riff that sounds like an old whatever, and all of a sudden it becomes you. So you mind, Dave and Justin and Billy, talking a little bit, and Victor, about I kind of know the answer. People are asking, though, how do you develop your tone? You know, do you work on your tone? Or I'd love to hear you talk about that, Billy.
Well, there's a funny thing. Me and Billy and Victor are all Harkey guys, right? And one day it hit me that I think there was a Bass Player magazine event, Bass Player Live, right, at SIR in LA. And it hit me because, Vic, you were set up. And I was going, you know what? I bet me and Vic have the same tone, like the California smile, which is a lot of bottom, a lot of top, and then all the mids scooped out, right? And I remember going up to you and I said, dude, let me plug in. I got to check this experiment, right? And of course I play with the pick. Vic slaps, pops, plays with the finger. And our tone was like, we could plug into the same amp and get the same tone. But it was obviously our different fingers, but our ears kind of heard the same thing. So it was funny, the tone curve. At the same time, there was a brand new amp about 10 years ago. Mark Mengy, when he worked at Harkey, he had a new amp, and it hadn't been tone centered yet. And basically, Billy, it was given to you as it was going to be essentially your amp. You were kind of tone centering the thing. And I remember plugging into it, and it was the opposite. It was like no bottom, no treble, all mids, right? I mean, a hard shelf, like a square shelf of mids, boosted, and just plugging into it, I can't get a friggin' tone out of this thing, like, you know. And he said, he goes, yeah, well, we had Billy tone shape it, you know. And it was just so funny how radically different our tones are. And of course, I play in a band where there's a lot of Marshall amplifiers, and the Marshalls are all mids, which is why I have to get out of the way of that. That's why I have a lot of bottom to get inside the kick drum. I always said it's like, you know, when the kick drum, when the beater hits the skin, that's the concussion, and then I'm the cannonball that follows through and punches you in the chest. That's essentially kind of a visual on the tone.
Ouch.
Right? Yeah, it hurts, exactly. And I noticed with Billy, you're very much the opposite. Your tone is this very mid-range centric, and that's just I probably bands as far back as Talus and the bands you grew up with. Probably the tones and the guitar players, and I think Talus was a one guitar band, so you had a lot more room in your tone to expand, and you were able to fill a lot more space. So I find a lot of it is filling space. I've oftentimes been in bands with two guitars, so they're kind of the bookends, and I'm somewhere in between. Me and, you know, again, getting down inside the kick drum. That's been sort of my philosophy on the bass.
Yeah, but Dave, I'm going to just push back because we're friends, and I'm going to say that I disagree.
Okay.
Only because I've heard Victor, I've heard Billy. Here, I'm pointing at them on the screen like they can see me. I've heard you, and I've heard you, Dave. I've heard Billy. I've heard Victor. I've heard Justin. All plug into the what we would call the worst amps ever in various settings. You know, on a stage here or on a gig there, and no matter what it is, each four of you sound like yourselves. So to me, yeah, the EQ is important, but Dave, I'll never forget at one of the rooms at Berkeley, one of the first things we did over there, you plugged in, we were going to jam a little bit, and you just started playing straight eighth notes on maybe it was an open A string or an open E string with just some riff, and I just had to stop playing and go, I can play with a pick, I can play downstrokes, I can do all of that, but I have never made a bass sound like yours, and it wasn't in the tone. So I respectfully disagree, and I'm going to put it back on you and say that it's in your hands, and it's in your. It's just like drummers, you know, they hit the same snare, the same intensity, but it sounds different, right, Billy? Have you noticed?
Completely different. Yeah, I was doing a rock and roll fantasy camp, and me and I think Rudy Sarzo had to kind of audition all the student drummers, and it was rough because a lot of them were just barely beginning playing, and you know we did what we had to do, and I had my back to the drum kit, and I had just gone through about 5 or 6 drummers, Susan. They're just, you know, some of them are okay, but they're learning, and we're coaching them as best we can and encouraging them, of course, but they're not up to really playing yet, and out of nowhere. I didn't see it, but Vinny Appice stepped behind the kit without me seeing him and just hit the snare drum one time. Bah! And I instantly knew and I spun around, and I told Ray about this because Ray's a big Vinny fan also. Instantly, there was the whole room sounded differently the moment his hand came down on that kit, on that snare drum. Amazing.
And it wasn't because it was louder. There was a tone that came from that. But
All finesse. It's all
Justin,
as much as I endorse musical products that I really use and I really play, and I try to encourage other players to use them too because they may help them out. It's really a hands thing. I practice a lot with no amp at all, or just plug direct into an input module with no EQ or anything. And there's a tonality to it. The famous story of Ted Nugent and Ed Van Halen playing through each other's amps, and they didn't sound any different through the other guy's amp. They sounded like it's really, really true. Generally, that mid-range hump, there's a weird thing called the Fletcher-Munson curve. As you turn things louder, they go like this. So when you turn that mid-range sound, because mine looks like a little hill like this, when you turn it up loud, it gets flat. And for me, having a flat tonality is, even though it may not seem like that, in the end, it does get pretty flat. And I played in a 3-piece band for a long time, and I had to kind of fill up the lack of keyboards or rhythm guitar. So that's how that kind of evolved. But I do agree with you, Steve, and that hand thing, that finesse thing. Everybody on this screen playing each other's instrument or through each other's rig, we're going to sound like we sound, I believe.
I remember backstage somewhere, I gave you my 6-string fretless. This was years and years ago. There was Victor, I think, was back there, and maybe Jeff Berlin and some people, and I gave you my bass, and I said, I just want to hear you play it. And guess what? You still sounded like you. It wasn't even plugged into an amp, and I know that wasn't me on a 6-string fretless. It's got to be Billy Sheehan. As strange as that sounds.
If you think about it, we are all talking over whatever mic we're using, computer mic, going through speakers. Some people are listening on a phone, but our voice is always going to come through.
Good point.
But I think our gear really is helping us become comfortable. For me, it's more comfort. I'm going to sound like me on a tuba. It doesn't matter what it is, good or bad. My voice is going to come through your voice. So I think it's what Dave and Steve and Billy it's all of it. But what's going to make me the most comfortable on stage so that I'm not thinking about the gear,
right,
and I can just immerse myself in the music is my starting point, which is my curve, my Hartke rig, my bass, whatever it is that I'm using. That's going to get me in a starting place where I can just forget about it. But it's true, Steve. Doesn't matter what we use. We've done this over and over, Steve, at clinics when people ask us how much do our expensive basses play into it. And one time, Steve and I were at a music store, and we just said, go pick anything up off the wall you want. And some people, they went and got some, I hate
the worst thing you could get just to try to torture us.
And of course, the tone is a little bit different, but our voice isn't. Yeah.
Hey, so let me bring this up. So Ray, your bass player, Fieldy, he made an interesting comment in a Bass Player magazine, I don't know, about a year ago. That your signature sound comes from the hand you write your signature with. So I'm right-handed, that it's not up here as much as it's right here. And I thought that was a really interesting concept, right? The signature sound comes from the hand you write your signature with.
Yeah.
So I remember, in the 80s growing up, it was kind of the shred era, everything, from Eddie Van Halen to Jaco Pastorius in the bass world. It was all this kind of shreddy, notey stuff. So I spent a lot of time over there on that hand. And then when I got in the studio and started recording, just to play to a click track, and all of a sudden it became about this hand, just give me, the engineers, just give me some 8s and some quarters, will you? Stop all the nonsense, And I realized that's obviously where the money is if you want to make a living. But just as much that I think that's oops, sorry, my thing's bumping. That comment hit me because I look back on my own life as a musician. I'm like, God, I think there's some truth to that it's right here, And I don't know, for drummers, I don't know which snare. It's funny with a lot of drummers, the snare is that signature, like Billy, what you just said about Vinny. Obviously you hear Kenny Aronoff, you hear Alex Van Halen, everybody, Danny, Dirk, and Ray, everybody on this thread. It's like this. I remember when Dirk auditioned for Megadeth, we didn't get the first song I think we played was Symbol of Destruction. We weren't halfway through the first verse, and me and the manager locked eyes and went, let's get this guy in the band. I mean, it was the snare drum. It was maybe the snare is the signature hand for drumming. I don't know.
Yeah, that's possible. But in Justin's case, I mean, and I had the pleasure, or I guess I kind of cornered him when he was at Berkeley, and we produce these tracks every year. It's a Christmas, usually a holiday track, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever. We try to do it all, but we just call it a holiday track, and we get a bunch of different bass players to play on it. In this particular year, Ron Carter had laid down, the jazz legend had done his thing, and Vic had played on it, and John Patitucci, and Justin's there, and I'm hearing, man, I mean, your tone, to me, is absolutely one of the most distinctive in rock and roll, and whenever you mix some of these patterns you play, and with that tone, so, and I haven't even told you this, but when you did your parts, and then we edited them all together, I can't count how many students, as I'm working on that, I wouldn't even say, some of them could, of course, recognize Ron Carter, and you're going to recognize Vic, and because I'm playing fretless chords, I guess, but as soon as your part, because your part was completely naked, it was just you playing it. This heavy killing bass line. Everybody goes, Tool. Tool. I mean, it's not even, it tells me that in their mind, it's the sound of the band. I mean, and as important as Danny is and everybody is, I mean, of course, I'm a bass player and I'm biased, but can you talk about how that tone is developed and if you think it really is your signature hand? And,
well, on that note, I wanted to ask Victor, does he write his signature with both hands?
No, I am right-handed.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
he's ambidextrous.
I'm sorry.
There was many years where I used to practice everything reverse. I never really practiced bass reverse, but I was one that wanted to learn both, but I'm right-handed.
Okay. No, I was going to say about my tone. I mean, it's really, in a way, the repertoire is quite small, like I pick up the bass. I'm sure everyone else feels a little bit this way. The first thing you do, it tends to be the same thing you always do. When you just pick up and you just start jamming or feeling around an instrument. I don't have this huge repertoire where I can play all these different styles, or I even play with a lot of different people. I'd like to expand that, and I do as the years go on. I try and play with different artists, but I think a lot of the tone comes from concentrating on what I'm good at, and it's quite simple. You know what I mean? It's not. I mean, yeah, there's like time signatures and all that, which I don't really understand. That's just what I hear. But the actual tone is what as Victor said, it's what I'm comfortable with, and perhaps some of the patterns that I'm familiar with and I rely on kind of crop up again and again. And I'm not going to pretend to be, this guy that could just like break out into anything new at any moment. So I just, I'm trying to like concentrate on what I'm good at and really focus on honing that and developing that and the little minuscule details of each note I play, you know what I mean?
But you're not consciously thinking about those minuscule details, are you?
Well, no. I mean, when you're recording a little bit, I can hear this one note that's just not ringing out enough, or I keep wanting to lead it into the next note in a better way. There's little things that happen in recording. But I mean, I think the fact is, as someone else said, the little muscles in your wrist, it's the weight of your bones as an individual. It's the height of your instrument. It's the way your spine curves, the thickness of your strap. It's all these things that go into the way that you play, and you found a sort of a, as Vic said, a little comfort zone. And then, you know, the people you're playing with, the band you're in, you're trying to, as Dave said, you're trying to fit in to the frequencies that are around you. And there's a certain amount of compromise you have to make. I always notice when I sit on my own at home, I like playing I have a few old Fender P basses, and I think they sound beautiful, like compared to my wah that I play in the band. They sound really musical, you know, but if I play them with the band, they don't really work. You know, they kind of disappear. They get swallowed up by all those other frequencies. So the tone that I have in Tool is in a lot of ways is crafted by necessity. You know, it's like it's playing the bass parts, doing the role of the bass player, but it's also fitting in with the sound of Danny's drums, the tone of Adam's guitar, and the voice. So it's not necessarily all of my own making. You know, it comes from a lot of those factors. And I think each time we do a record, you want to try and experiment a little bit and try all these different amps and see what new technologies come out, see if you can make the thing that you hear, that you want to hear, see if you can make it even closer to that, if you can capture it, record it closer to what you're hoping to hear. And each time, even if it's after 13 years, I went through every amp, I went through every new preamp, I went through every different type of strings, and I came right back to the same ones I'd used before because they sound good with these guys, you know? Now, if I play with some other people, I'm at liberty to experiment a little more, and in a lot of cases, other tones will be more appropriate. So,
Okay, now I get to pick on two of my favorite people. I tricked you last night. And last night we got together a little bit on Zoom to just test it and make sure it works. And he had his P bass sitting there, and I had mine, and we started having this P bass contest. But when you played, and I made special note of this, and you weren't even playing through an amp, but playing acoustically, the way your pick attacks, and it gets me back to maybe thinking Dave Fieldy's right, but it sounded like you on that P bass, not through an amp.
yeah, I mean, it's again,
You
it's
have it sitting there?
yeah. Sorry.
Well, prove me wrong.
Well,
Don't
you're
plug
gonna
it in. It dropped out.
Yeah, we lost the audio.
There's too much bass for Zoom.
Yeah, just blew it out.
Hey,
Trust me, it sounds like.
yeah, to me that's you. But even without an amp, you swamped out Zoom. We couldn't even hear the low notes.
Well, I mean, it also, we all hit the string in a different, you know, the length of the string is different for all of us, depending on where our right hand hits, even if we're fretting on the same note. You know, the weight of attack, I guess those things, you know, just become ingrained in your body, you know, and they're recognizable.
Yeah.
And our ear hears things in a certain way. I mean, I started playing with a pick years ago as a teenager because growing up in Minnesota, you know, a 50-watt Marshall was so loud, and that in order to get over, I just had a little Music Man half stack, and in order to get over it, I had to hit with a pick to just hit the string hard enough to get some tone because my ear heard that. So part of what we're hitting with our hand is also reflective of what our ear is wanting to hear. You know, our ear wants to hear a certain way, and someone had just commented, like in one setting with our guy, maybe it's you, Justin, you know, in Tool and Megadeth, whatever, and, you know, Sons of Apollo, Korn, we need a certain tone because it fits with that group of guys and the way the drums and the guitars are hitting. We get out of that setting and go play with some different guys. Maybe we turn the treble down, or maybe we turn it up. You know what I mean? Or we strike the string a little more gently or a little more viciously to just get the bass to respond more. So a lot of it's the end result of what's hitting our ear, and the mechanics of how we strike the instrument is going to be altered.
In a way, it sounds like it's just trying to describe what your voice sounds like, and that's a hard thing to do.
Right. because a lot of the times what we attribute to tone, or I could reverse it. What we contribute and we say what a person's voice is, we attribute it to tone, but it's a whole lot more than just tone that lets you recognize a voice. Like when I hear Justin talk, if the next time I heard him, he didn't have that accent, but the tone was the same, it'd be different. I mean, a part of what his sound, his voice is that is what I'm calling an accent. It's not an accent for him, but it's more than just the tone. And like you said, Justin, you know, the thickness of the strap. Of course, you guys know the thickness of the pick. What kind of pick you use is going to change the tone.
Yeah.
But overall, and I just want to say this for the people that are listening, because I know everyone's going to go home and just start adjusting their amp or something. And that's good, but it's a whole lot more than that. And in many cases, what I've noticed in trying to figure out what tone really is, and this is just me, and everyone is allowed to disagree. What I have found in studying musicians and singers is that in most cases, if you are good, or you're playing well, singing well, and people want to hear it, they'll adjust to your tone, and they'll call your tone good. Because, an example, when I listen to maybe a Willie Nelson sing, or a Bob Dylan, or even a Mick Jagger, or David Lee Roth even, you know, if you go to a vocal class, they're going to get criticized and get low grades on their tone. But nobody sounds like Willie Nelson. He's the only one. Nobody sounds like Dylan, David Lee Roth. They're the only one, and they're really good at it. So we accept it as greatness. And then everybody wants that tone. And I don't know how much that tone was practiced. It may have been. But I think one of the secrets is just longevity. Just keep doing it. Whatever it is you do it so much, like your speaking voice. Nobody here worked on their voice. Parents didn't say, okay, go sit in the corner, practice your tone, you know. They may tell you not to speak with me in that tone. But it's just the longevity and the naturalness of being you. And more than the tone we use is what we're saying with it. And I believe that once you say something that touches someone, they will accept the tone. For me, finding the tone is what really helps me become comfortable so that I don't have to focus on it and I can just speak, you know. That's the way I look at it. And I'm not saying don't work on your tone, but I am saying don't blow it up for these people that think they got to go and buy this and buy that. And, you know, whatever tone, if I like a Tool record, whatever tone you're using is what I'm going to go buy. What bass was that? What pedal was that? And then I'm going to have it, and it's not going to sound good because it's me trying to be you, right? Mm-hmm. But if a person out there can just really keep working on themselves and maybe study themselves the same way I'm going to study a Billy Sheehan or study a Dave Ellison. Study your own self and find out what makes your tone you, and then get better at it. And if you say good stuff with it, you know, because every bass player we talk about, every drummer, we're all going to have a different tone. So not one that's better or not, it's just yours. Mm-hmm. It's the way I see it.
Hey, Dave Marvulio, I definitely want to include you because one class we offer at Berkeley that I've never seen anywhere, in fact, Sandro and I helped write this. He taught it first, but it's called pedology, where we actually the study of pedals and how to use them and how to sequence them in the right order, various orders. And Dave, you teach that class now. And when Dave Marvulio is coming, and we companies send us pedals to use like this, and has 10 different distortion pedals. To me, the subtleties of those are so, and to me they're subtleties. Maybe to you they're not obvious, but there definitely is an art, as I've heard Justin do. I'm sure the sequence of your pedals affect your tone or whatever you're going to do. If you took the same pedals and changed the sequence of them, it's going to be a different outcome.
Oh, yeah. It's like my pedal board is basically kind of like a keyboard, you know, with different modules, you know, in a specific series, and I rely on knowing exactly what's going to happen when I have 3 of them on in a certain series. You know, it's going to make a different type of feedback if I switch them around. So.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Dave, I think, addresses is a lot of people who buy pedals, younger musicians and some older experienced musicians don't understand how they just think you throw it all in a blender and it comes out a cake, but
No, it's a lot of tinkering. You know, it's kind of similar to Billy. I do a lot of acoustic playing, and that really helps set up my tone. And then when I use the effects, it can accent certain elements of the playing that I want.
So you teach a class in that, though. Like, give me an idea what one of the tests would be, a final exam. What do they do in a pedology class?
Using the effects in a musical situation and seeing how they can be creative to make it complement the song.
Right.
And Dave, I've seen you in your class send people home. Their project is take this song, take it home, go to the pedal rent out library, rent the pedals, and come back with that sound. How did they get that sound? And I thought that was really neat because they had to learn about compression, because distortion with or without compression is different, you know, and they had to figure out. That's one of the things you do for a test, isn't it?
Yeah, we do all that.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Well,
Yeah.
man, the one thing that I've noticed with these is that time flies. And in talking, and I feel like we could go on for a while, but out of respect for all of you who've given your time, I'd love, as we go out, talk about some things that we look for in the future, what we're looking forward to, maybe new projects we're working on. I know Justin was telling me about some stuff he's doing, but I'm sure everybody has something, and I'm sure there are thousands of people still sitting out here who would love to hear what you're up to.
And Steve, if you don't mind, as you choose people, if you don't mind, can they add, because there's almost 500 questions. If you guys don't mind, just a couple seconds of what these people, mostly bassists and drummers, and I've seen one person as young as 13 up here who's been playing for 1 year. What is like a tip that everyone can take home that you think can help them improve in their careers, their music, their life, whatever? Especially right now, because we're home and we got time to do it.
Play a little bit every day.
Who's that?
David Ellison.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what else you working on, David? What you got coming up?
Well, when we can finally make a Megadeth record, that's one. I've actually been working a lot on this. I've got this David Ellison Youth Music Foundation where we're offering free lessons to students that went with high schools that got shut down. And I've tapped a bunch of my famous buddies, and maybe I'll even call some of you when we get off this call to help pitch in on that. And that's just been a lot of fun. Dirk has been there to help out with that. And it's been interesting. You know, so much of our world is so self-focused. You know, what's our next gig or my next thing, da-da-da-da-da. And we've got so many people around us that always are kind of pandering to our, you know, what we're doing, that it's nice to be able to give away some for free and for fun. And that's been helping me a lot in this time. It's like the last month has just flown right by as a result of that. So giving of music rather than always having it have to be about us.
Right. You have a website or?
Yeah, EllefsonYouthMusicFoundation.org.
Say that again, please.
EllefsonYouthMusicFoundation.org is
You
where
could type it
students
into
can
the
sign up.
chat if you want. It would stay there.
Should I type it? Where should I type it? In the chat?
Look in the chat. Yep.
I'll type it.
Make sure.
Okay, cool. That's, yeah.
Hey, Danny, besides changing diapers now and getting your chops back up on that, I know, and trying to get sleep at some point in between, what's going on in your world?
Well, I tracked a record with Mitch Foreman and Jimmy Earl and Doug Webb and some guys. And we just kind of went in one afternoon and recorded 11 songs, like in about 2 hours, 3 hours. So we're mixing that right now. So we're going to try to get that out soon. It's kind of some straight ahead stuff and kind of fusion-y things. There's a couple Miles tunes and things like that on there. So that was kind of fun to do. But other than that, you know, I'm hoping during this downtime, as soon as we're able, maybe we'll get together, Justin and I and Adam, maybe start hashing out some new Tool stuff. In the meantime, maybe try to write another EP since we're down and we can't do anything else. I'm just kind of, waiting on that, waiting around. But that's all I've really got going on.
Man, well, that sounds amazing. I know the chat's lighting up on the possibility of that.
It's going so
well,
fast.
yeah, it was kind of just thrown together, but it was fun. It was a different experience for me, like way different than the Tool thing. That's for sure. Man, just to go in and record and all play together, and there it is.
What's that album? Is it coming out under Doug's name or?
Yeah, it'll be under Doug Webb's name. Yeah.
When you talk to Doug, tell him I said, hey, man, we have.
I will for sure. I'm going to have to run, you guys, so I'm going to use that as my sign off because I have to get to an appointment by 12:30 in Santa Monica. Cool. So
good to hang, Danny.
Hey, Danny.
Good to see you again, man.
Thank you so much, guys. You rule.
With you.
Yeah.
Love you,
Big
Dan.
fan of all of you, man.
The whole chat room is saying bye to you, Danny. The whole chat room is saying
Take care.
bye.
Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. All right, bye.
Ray, what's going on with you and Billy? I heard this crazy version of Hot for Teacher. Are you guys recording that again?
Hot for Teacher 2020.
Yeah.
We're definitely, Billy and I have been working on, I moved to Nashville 6 years ago, and in my studio in LA, in Tarzana, we were working on a record together. And because our schedules are always doing this, he's on tour, I'm home. When I'm on tour, he's home. So we're finally, now that we're almost neighbors, we're working on something together. Really cool, really musical stuff.
Sorry. Let me mute that. Sorry.
That's our new song right there.
Nice.
What's going on there? We all hear it differently.
Good. So we're getting that together and hopefully start tracking soon, especially because of this quarantine. So hopefully that's going to happen. I have a side band with Doug Pinnick from King's X and George Lynch, everyone knows from Lynch Mob and Dokken, called KXM, and we just put our third record out the end of last year. And we're trying to get some shows together. Obviously, no one knows when the next show is going to be. So, but other than that, just playing a ton, If people want to check me out on Instagram, it's Ray Luzier Korn, Korn. My Twitter's Ray Luzier1, and Facebook is Ray Luzier Official. So,
beautiful.
Matt, respect for all you guys. I appreciate you having me. It means a lot.
Right on, Ray.
Nice to see you, Ray. Yeah.
Billy.
Right on. Are you speaking, Steve? I can't hear you.
Yeah,
I'm
Billy,
supposed to be speaking. Nothing.
yeah. What you got going on, Billy?
Doing that record with Ray it's been a joy. We've got a million crazy ass things. We can't be on the road with Sons of Apollo right now. We had a new record out and started off pretty well, but unfortunately we had to choke that down because of the situation. Probably going to do a new Winery Dogs record coming up. We're going to start writing for that halfway through this year and maybe be out playing with that. And that's about it. I'm producing a singer-songwriter I found here from LA, actually, who keeps sending me hit records, and it's just so amazing. So I'm going to do a record with him and put that together. And you asked initially about a little bit of advice, Vic, talking about answering some of the questions in the chat room. And when I do my clinics and seminars and whatever nonsense, I always try to make a point for all young musicians that number one, get in a band. Sitting around playing the YouTube videos, that's all good. But unless you're in a room with somebody actually really playing and working out parts and ideas and writing and dealing with the personalities you have to deal with, success on your own is awfully tough. In a band, it's way easier. And we see so many examples of it throughout music history. Playing in a band, great. Playing in a band that has songs sounds stupidly simple, but it's really true. You got to have songs. You got to have pieces of music. If your songs have singing in them, that's an even greater expansion of the people you can reach with your music. So I try to emphasize that a lot. Playing a band with songs, playing a band whose songs have singing will always, Geddy Lee, Chris Squire, even Jocko on his first solo record. I think he had Sam and Dave sing a couple tracks with him. So those things are important aspects for some of the people that have been on the chat here. And thank you very much again, Steve, for having me. And wonderful to see you all. And what a great experience to hang with all you guys. Really fantastico. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Billy.
Victor, tell us what's going on with you.
Finishing up the new book, the sequel to the first book, The Music Lesson. We're hoping to come out late fall. So I've been working with the publisher, just finishing up, polishing up the final touches on that. We are also working out the details for our camps this year, which this will be the first time I've even talked about it online. They will be online using Zoom. We'll be doing a base camp, I think is in June. And I may be trying to hit up some of you guys because I know where you're going to be. You'll be right at home.
I'm in.
The answer, but I know where you are. Right? No, but doing camps online, we'll miss doing them at our place. We have a wonderful 150-acre place in the woods on a river, but because we'll do them online, we have access to more people, more instructors, more students, and I think we can reach a wider amount of people and still do good things and share. So we're working on that. We'll be posting on that very, very soon. And like probably all of us, we're just trying to reschedule gigs.
Yeah.
All these gigs that got canceled, we're on the phones and in emails trying to find dates, looking at calendars, when can we reschedule? So that's a lot of it. But I will say number one right now is just being with my family, my kids and my wife, and getting that time that I haven't gotten in decades, and really, really paying attention to that. And I'll say this last thing, I'll be quiet. I realize now that playing the bass, which is right here, is what I do. But who I am goes way beyond that. And so not getting to go out and play the bass is really making me, and allowing me rather, to focus on who I am beyond what I do,
Beautiful.
And it's nice to work on that and to share that with my family. Since we have to be inside, I'm really going inside and taking advantage of having to be inside and dealing with the people that are close, and then that way when I get back to real life, I'll be better, and that will help. To me, I think that'll help life come back better, not just normal, So
One thing,
myself.
Whenever we started, it looked like we were going to be sequestered and socially distanced. Vic and I, we're also working on a new Basic Streams album, and that's one of our, we said, we can finish this, we can get all the guest artists on it, and we can finish this, and we kind of did it like we did the first Basic Streams with Greg Bissonette, and there's still some tidying up to do. It's been a month ago, we haven't lifted a finger, because it's so funny, how busy, I was talking to Ricky Miner, how busy we get with other, it's not like we don't have anything to do. And in some ways, I feel busier than I've ever been,
Right.
With events like this and trying to keep us all connected. But yeah, Vic, maybe we'll get to that record at some point too.
We need to do that, Steve. And it's so funny, people ask me what I'm doing. I forget to even talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's literally right here on the computer in front of me. I need to open up that track and finish some parts.
And for those of you who registered, you saw the Bass Vault mentioned too. That's another project that we're working on, an educational project that you'll be hearing more from.
Yeah, we're bringing it back, the Bass Vault.
Justin, you've been working on some cool stuff. I know you can't really talk about it, but
Well, a little bit. I'm just doing some projects with people from, I guess you could say, completely different genres of music. Throwing some ideas around with Peter Murphy, actually current Bauhaus. I think they were on tour just recently. They got cut off as well. But we have a mutual friend, just through management stuff. So we're just like bouncing around some ideas. which we've been doing the last few weeks. It's been really fun. He's out in Istanbul. So it's so cool how you can just transcend that whole distance thing. I have a friend in Poland as well. I did an album a long time ago. The project was called MT Void. We did one record, and he's basically he sings in Polish and he makes beats, and it's a whole different type of thing than Tool. Very conducive to doing online. He sends me something, I play on it, send it back. He changes it, sends it back. I put a guitar in it. It's very, it's not the way, I think someone was talking about how great it is to be in the room with the band. Dave, you were. I've kind of had enough of that for a few years. Like we were really hard at it for several years with Tool. So I'm actually enjoying the opposite of that and doing some things, being a little more isolated.
We'll be sending you that Bass Extremes track. Give you something to do.
I'm so up for it, man. I'm up for everything. I'm right. And the other thing is, I don't know if this is my piece of advice, but someone asked me the other day, my friend, I just texted him, see how he's doing. And I was telling him about some collaborations, and he said, do you get asked to do a lot of collaborations? And I was like, not really, to be honest. They pretty much come from people you run into, or people's brothers or mothers or sisters, or whoever. It's just kind of what crops up in your every day-to-day life. And so it's kind of important just to respect the fact that those are the things that you're going to get to do, and not have too many greater aspirations beyond that. You know what I mean? Like, I want to work with whoever. It's probably not going to happen. They're probably not even going to get on with you, So it's just kind of the things that arrive in front of you are fundamentally important to follow and at least check out and pursue. So that's really what I try and do while I'm at home here.
Yeah. Dirk,
thank you very much for having me. It's been amazing to meet all of you.
I'm not kidding about sending you that Bass Extremes track.
I hope not, because I'm like tickled right now.
Man, it's coming. Check your email. I just did it. Dirk, what's going on in your world?
Apart from obviously recording the Megadeth album as soon as that's possible somehow, I'm teaching a lot. I think one of my pieces of advice, actually, for everybody who tuned into this wonderful broadcast, would be to take this chance to maybe study with some people that you hadn't thought about before. I think there's a lot of musicians right now that are home and didn't plan to be home, that are available to do lessons on Zoom or Skype or whatever. I'm one of them, but I know all of you guys probably will plan things like that. So it's a great time to pick the brains of some of your favorite artists and learn something new. Keep studying, obviously, keep practicing. That's what I'm doing. I'm also I have my band, Band C, with Shane Embry from Napalm Death and my good friend Sven from the band Aborted. And we make very noisy, loud music, but I'm always working on that. So we have a bunch of new releases coming up. And I kind of grew up with that whole, grindcore death metal scene. That was kind of my thing growing up. So I'm always, working in that field, even though that's not really, to the opposite of what Billy was saying. It's not something commercial where you can expect any sort of success, but I just do it out of passion and because I like that kind of thing. And yeah, so I'm working on that. And another piece of advice also that came to mind as I was listening to everything we were saying is I think it's really important to follow your heart and be yourself. We talk a lot about all the theoretical aspects and all the tone and all those different things that play a role, but I think it's really important over time to believe in who you are and to believe in your voice. And I was actually talking to one of my drum students yesterday who was a little bit down on himself, and I told him, look, you don't have to be someone else. You can just be you. Maybe you feel like you don't play as well as some of the people you listen to, or some of the things that you trying to achieve are a little bit out of reach. But the truth is that's the case for most of us. We're all still studying, we're all still learning every day. Even the most experienced of us are still practicing our instruments and trying to do different things and new things and get better at what we do. So I think it's just, at any stage, whether you're 12 years old and you're just starting out an instrument, or you're way older than that and you've done a lot of things, you never stop learning. That's what my late mother told me. One of the best pieces of advice she ever gave me is you never stop learning. So believe in yourself, follow your heart, do what you love, and persevere with that, and good things will happen.
Hey, beautiful words. Do you mind typing into the chat how people can find you if they want to take a lesson from you?
Absolutely, I will do that right now. Thank you.
Yeah, man, I may be hitting you up.
Please, it would be a pleasure, Steve.
Drum tracks over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing, I mean, there's so much in what you said and what Victor said and what Justin said and Billy said and Dave said and Dave said and Danny and Ray. I mean, I keep thinking my message is more in the moment in a way. Is that I think we're all faced with some challenges, and some of them are emotionally difficult, they're mentally difficult, they're physically difficult, and it's a lot. But I really, the longer we get through this, and I go through these, I watch the sunrise every morning. It's something I've underappreciated my whole life until you watch it come up over the ocean or watch it set on the West Coast, which I'm sure you can see out of your window, Justin. But to make the most of this time, because for better and worse, we'll likely never have it again. And there's so much good that I'm getting from this that I'm going to try to hold on to. And I want to keep meeting like this after it's over. I don't want us to look back and say, oh, remember that when we all got together? I mean, I think there's going to be a new normal. And I'm hoping that this kind of connection and this kind of teaching, which is so, how many people we can reach in with just our words, and nobody can underestimate that. So I hope we continue, and that we individually create events, and we just stay connected. And I think if there's a big lesson for me to learn from this, it's that how to connect people and how to connect ourselves to people, because we do need each other regardless of what we really think. The thing I've been working on, I've got a new album, and I just talked to the lawyer today, and whenever somebody mentions an album and a lawyer, it's probably, but I'll know, there's one artist, it's an album of duets, and it's me, and each track is a different person, and one of the people that's on there, they're mostly people I've worked with over the years, from Ian Anderson to Mike Stern and Dennis Chambers and Howard Levy and just all kinds of different Victor's on there, a duet with Ron Carter that's kind of cool. But one of them is tied up in legal limbo until his album comes out, and I'm going to know tomorrow if that's going to be available. But hopefully it will be. It's Victor even listens to it, so I know he listens to the one track that you wouldn't guess that person that he would listen to. Let's just put it that way. And
Steve, when's the last face-to-face conversation you had with someone? When was the last time you did that?
Is it obvious? It's been a while.
Your studio tan is showing.
Yeah, I mean, when this first started, I was planning on flying back to Boston, and then I started getting a fever, and that scared me, and it scared my family, and so I've been here in Myrtle Beach and getting a lot of good things done, but it's been a while. Yeah, thanks for. Yeah, hopefully soon we'll all have face-to-face.
Well, you're doing some good things. Thanks for putting all these type of things together, getting people together that without this pandemic, it probably would have never happened.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Victor.
Seeing Ron Carter and Anthony Jackson basically in the same room, this is cool. Getting to meet Justin and see Dirk and Ellison I hadn't seen in a while. Billy's a neighbor now, but we still don't get to hook up enough. We're all so busy, Sandro. It's just so cool, man. So thanks for making it happen, Steve.
Cool, man. Let's do it. Let's keep doing it. I'm going to try to continue these through the year. I don't know if it'll be weekly like we've been doing, because this running the bass department and some other projects really take a lot of time. But just seeing you all here and giving of your time like this to me and to everybody else, it's inspirational. So I will continue. I want to thank everybody out there. We're going to follow up with an email probably the next day. This will be broadcast at some later date when we all figure it out. It won't be on Zoom, and maybe we'll do something with it to do some good for other people. But eventually this will be available again, I hope. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
a big shout out to Sandro,
Good to see
who's
you.
been quiet the whole time. Sandro, Sandro, tell us something in Italian that we won't understand, but we can't refuse.
Buon appetito.
Oh, no, you're not getting. Hey, I've been eating peanut butter and banana sandwiches and stuff like that, and occasionally some good food. But if you're ever in Boston, and if you're any of you that I'm looking at, and all the other 2,000, 3,000 people out there, if you can get to Sandro's house, Victor's been there, Dave Marvulio's been there. I wish I were socially isolated with his family, because there's some good eating going on there.
Pasta.
Handmade pasta.
Handmade pasta. That guy right there. Wow.
So next time you're in Boston, we're all going to Sandro's house.
All right. It's a deal.
Cool.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, guys. See
I
ya.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll catch up on the other
Have a
side.
respect for all
everyone.
this.
Billy,
Thank you.
take care. Bye. Bye, Vic.
Bye.